board, the town of Newbury. It's, the order, it's 7:02. And, for the television audience and others, introduce ourselves. My name is John Weiss. I'm the chair of the board,
Kathleen Pearson,
co-chair.
co-chair? No,
John-
vice
Vice
chair,
chair.
vice chair.
John O'Connell.
Martha
George
Taylor, Town
Morris,
Planner.
Associate
Oops,
Member.
sorry.
Okay,
Did I cut you off?
just do that again.
Martha Taylor, Town Planner.
Yeah, hi, I'm George Morris, Associate Member.
David Powell.
And the first order of business is the meeting minutes from September 18th, which is our joint meeting with the selectmen regarding 67, 69. So I had a couple of just quick comments that I wasn't able to get to Martha on. I just want to go over them with the board and see if they agree. But in B, where it says Sam Taylor reported that the subcommittee working on the revisions to the site plan bylaw reported as met.
Oh,
So to get rid of reported,
yes, the second reported.
second reported.
I had a couple of those.
And then, on page on page 2, the 6th line, where we begin, the program is a unique business model. I'd like to insert there according to the applicant. Okay?
Yep.
Get what I'm saying? Is we've got saying here that the program is unique model, unique to the United States, and I don't know that as a fact.
She
but I know-
described it that way.
She
Right.
described it that way.
Yeah,
So-
no, that's fine.
Okay, so I'd like to say something.
I think it actually is, but it's something else.
Maybe. Now, at the bottom of the, next to the bottom of where we talk about that the plan shows this new drive as asphalt, but following up on his input with conservation, just intended to gravel. So do we still say that even though we know now that, based on our site visit or when we, that he's going back to the asphalt?
Well, that's what he said at the time.
Yeah, I'd say
So-
leave it at the time. It's doing no harm because that's a snapshot
Okay.
of then.
Right,
And
and,
the events will show what he's actually going to do, which we don't know for sure yet.
And then just at the bottom, Martha, I just got, where we talk about the landscaping plan shows proposed new planting in front of the building along edge of Route 1 right of way to screen the parking. And the planter boxes and window boxes, I'm not sure if that's the purpose of the, I think they want to screen the parking, but the planters and the window boxes are gonna be installed for adornment of this.
right there at the facade, yeah, it was just the plantings along the Route 1 right-of-way, which was screening the parking.
Anyway, if
So,
you would look at that. and
okay.
see if you might wanna rework
Rework that, okay. And George also had a correction in the second sentence of that.
Just dropping out the word will in one place,
it. Okay.
the end of the sentence where it was excess.
And that's all. So with those adjustments, I call for approval of the
Move to approve
As amended?
as amended.
as amended.
Of course.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It passes. So Deborah and George Carbone. And someone else.
And someone else. I'm Attorney John Farley, representing Deborah and George Carbone.
Welcome.
Thank you. This is a request for an A&R endorsement on a plan of land on Scotland Road. The land is just west of Scotland Heights, and there are two parcels involved. One is described on the plans that the town planner is presently distributing.
They're copies, right? All right, there we go.
Okay.
The simplest way of describing it is we are taking lot A that shows on the plan. It is a back parcel, it's not fronting on any road whatsoever. We are simply taking lot A.
2.27 acres.
It's 2.27 acres.
Okay.
We are moving it from the assessors map parcel R44, parcel 16. It is being moved from that over to the lot in front of it at 121 Scotland Road. The net result is that the frontage of R4416 remains the same, and the frontage at 121 Scotland Road remains the same. There are no effects on zoning whatsoever. All that happens now is that there are roughly 28 acres on parcel R4416. That's being reduced to 26. The property at 121 Scotland Road is being increased from 2.10 acres to roughly 4.37 acres. That's the net effect of it.
Why was it drawn this way? Usually we see it drawn differently, don't we? Existing versus proposed.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that there's a requirement one way or the other, as long as what we're doing is clear.
Would you mind walking this way for one
I
second?
don't mind whatsoever.
So, this right here is the existing boundary,
Right.
right here?
No, the
No,
existing
just that.
boundary is right here on Scotland Road. It's
So
this
parcel-
L-shaped parcel.
Yeah, this parcel is this.
This is this, and
This is
Adding
existing.
this, which is part of this, and they're taking it out of this and
Yeah,
putting it
yes.
into that.
so what I was trying to say is, this is a proposed line, correct?
Yes, it is.
And this was the existing line, right here, or no?
Everything that you see right now from Lot A was
Yeah,
part of
okay.
this R44 parcel
Yeah,
16.
So this was an existing parcel line to this, right
Cor-
here. and this
correct.
is the proposed.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Do the owners wanna make any comments about this? No? Board members have any questions? Aside from that?
Just looking at the, pardon me, the plan we have, I would guess that you have to be trustees of the trust?
George is trustee of both trusts. That's correct.
Yeah, I
But
think
one is
it would
trust
have,
one, one is trust two, the other is trust one.
So
So it's
which
moving
is-
from trust two over to trust one.
I think it would have been nice if we could have started off with that, since their name is very different from the name that appears both in the town records and on your plan. But I guess that they, since I think I've worked on the open space plan with your son, I guessed it was you. Okay, thank you.
And we have had a lot of discussions back and forth clarifying that over the past couple of days. So,
It's, rather important when we have a plan where their name doesn't appear at all.
right. That was kind of question one.
John, any comments?
No, I don't have any problem with this.
Any, you have a further question?
Yeah. Martha, you looked over the plan and it meets all the requirements?
I've gone over the plan. I did have some comments which the engineer picked up. And as I said, we've had some discussions about ownership and interest in the property and, George's right to represent this. So I
So
think
all your
everything's.
concerns have been addressed?
Yeah, all my concerns have been addressed.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion?
Yeah, I move.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye. You need to sign that.
So,
Be a course now, we can, after the meeting,
yeah, John's the only one who needs to, the chair's the only one who needs to sign the Mylar. We do need the Form A from you and a check for $400 made out to the town of Newbury. Well, this is,
I have a blue pen.
this is,
Not fancy.
this is part of the whole
but-
discussion of interest in the property,
Like this
so.
Okay, so
Is the other inch thin? This
Which one
ends.
with this one?
I'm just saying, that's thick. This one's thin.
I'm okay. Right here?
Yep. Date, your name and date.
You have to show me.
Guess not that hard.
do you have the Form A that we emailed over to Lloyd?
I have,
I'll have George sign that one.
oh, you want to have him sign this one? Okay.
I like this.
are you?
Yeah, how you doing, Eric? Don't you know I had a whole bunch of students make presentations last night, and they all looked great. No one had t-shirts.
No one had midriff showing? I'm debating whether to send an email to the dean.
Well, send it to the professor.
No, because he wore jeans and he had a button down, but he's
So,
he's only a year older.
all right. Hold on. Thank you.
You have to do the Mylar, and you have to do the.
This is actually the only one that, this is what you really need on the Mylar, you don't need.
And you need to sign the papers. Should be multiple copies here.
I think she
Martha.
says it's like a secretary. Don't say that, don't let her know.
On to copy something, I think.
You have, you need to sign the other papers.
I don't have them.
I know, but you need to sign, so she must have just went to get the. Okay.
Oh, it's the Form A.
Right. Here she is. No, not quite. Now that she- Do they need to wait for this?
Yeah, because they're gonna wanna take the, you're gonna wanna wait for these, you can take the, plans with you and then file them, so just give her a minute.
You need to have music on hold.
Yes.
It's quite embarrassing with that.
I can't remember, is there a appeal period for this? No.
I
is
don't
there?
think so.
I don't,
It-
can't remember.
I don't believe
don't
so.
think
It
so.
needs to be filed in the registry, obviously.
Right, yeah.
It hasn't happened until it gets filed. But I don't think there's an appeal period. Is there? I don't remember there being one.
There's no appeal period for an A&R, right? That's just for our other.
Or
sign-offs.
other, right, yeah, I don't think so. If it would be 20 days.
I've never seen anything that doesn't appear.
Yeah, you want to give that to me and I'll,
So I guess an interesting question, and this is, are you gonna do any, are you gonna subdivide this further, just out of curiosity? This large parcel?
The large parcel will not be belonging to them in the long run.
But you,
It's going to a family member.
oh, okay.
That's what's happening. This is a division between family members in essence.
I don't know what the topo is like in here. Is this hilly, or is this,
Sorry?
is this topography hilly in here, or is it flat?
It's lake.
It's ledge.
yeah, it's very similar
Yeah, to what,
to the Heights.
to the
Right,
heights, right?
rises up, as I remember anyway, right, yeah. And parts of it are a little damp, shall we say, when it rains?
Yes. That also shows on the plan.
Right,
Yeah, I see it here.
yeah.
Just did they take all these?
Martha keeps, a copy, and
All right,
then.
do you have one?
Actually, they get the Mylar, and I keep the prints.
Okay. Okay.
We'd be all finished by now except George.
So were the 3 of the past 4 presidents, so there you go.
Okay. I rest my case.
All the best people, George, are left-handed.
Left-handed?
Of course.
2 left-handed people?
Yeah.
At the end?
At the
Each end
ends.
of the, that's why we sit at each end of the
That's
table.
Sure, the viewing audience is enthralled by all of this.
I'm sure, well, you know, it's something to keep them occupied, right? I didn't bring my joke book, so.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I can start setting up now.
Yep, you can. Okay, the next item on the agenda is Kathleen, our,
Thanks, good night.
I'll do it now. Kathleen, our vice chair, is making a presentation on a study that she performed over the past year. And date it.
Side.
All of these?
All of these, please.
If you're gonna be right there, it won't work too well. But that's all right.
We switch it.
Yeah.
Put that
No,
in
it's
front.
okay, I can do
But you can move that in front of me.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even need to sit at the table. I can put it on my lap.
No, that's right.
Oh, I need the light switch down.
It's coming.
The third one. I think it's the third one in. It's the third one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. It's quite a screensaver.
That's my trip.
Right.
The Italian Riviera.
Positano. Oops. Station.
So I'm just curious, as we're sitting here waiting, when you sit there, do any of the cameras pick you up? Do we know this? Do you know what
They
happens
pick
here?
up the screen.
Yeah.
They
and
pick up the
can
screen?
pick up
Yeah.
Kathleen from that camera up there, and the back of her head from the one on the back of the room.
From the selectmen meeting, they picked up the screen.
Yeah.
They were doing it.
Well, he's doing it with that one.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. 1 second. Come on. I don't know, it's taking a second to come up. I have it. Just give me that. Here we go. All right. So
There we go.
So I'm Kathleen Pearson, as the board knows. What I have here is my final presentation to the graduate school. I gave the Board of Selectmen a brief summary of it, about 20-minute presentation. This presentation was a little over the hour. I don't think that I need to give you an hour, but I think you might want a little bit more extensive background than the selectmen on detail. So I'm just going to go through it, and some of it we're going to skip through, and some of it will stay a little bit longer to explain in more detail. Yes. So my project was, we'll start. So in 11 weeks I'll graduate with my master's degree in civil environmental engineering from Northeastern University. Last year I spent the year in the Gordon Engineering Leadership Program. A large component of this program was a project. For most students in the class, they work for a corporation, and the corporation sends them to this program for a year, and they work on a project they have to complete. For my situation, I did a project for the town of Newbury. I wasn't sponsored by Newbury. They didn't pay for me to go to school or provide me a budget to complete the project. However, what I got out of it was the experience. So basically, they got free consulting, and I got the experience to count towards my degree. The project is the impact of a public water supply on economic development. I had a strong team of advisors for this project. I had a Gordon mentor, Steve Klosterman, who was part of the program. I had a faculty advisor from the College of Civil Environmental Engineering, Phil Las Casanova. Tracy Blaze was my town advisor. And then I pulled in our chair, John Weiss, who has an extensive background in planning and development. And for this project, I also recruited a former colleague who's a associate vice president at AECOM, who is my civil PE advisor. So my agenda for today is to give you a little bit of background. I'm going to go right into my results, and then we'll go through. And at the end, I think it might be more helpful in this case if you have a question, maybe you ask during the presentation, because we don't necessarily have to go through everything since I'm going straight to the results at the beginning. So the project is to evaluate the town of Newbury's ability to provide a public water supply to encourage economic development in the town's largest commercial industrial district located along Route 1. That's our business and light industrial district. Now I guess I'll go through this. This is a little financial background for the faculty that I was presenting. However, what I was trying to explain to them was the value of this project is right now the town is financially struggling. Each year we come up to the point where our revenue our expenses exceed our revenue. So the point of this project is to evaluate whether or not we can encourage economic development along Route 1 if we had a public water supply. Currently, in 2014 fiscal year, 80% of the residential property taxes make up our projected revenue. Only 3% is provided by our commercial property tax. And out of that 3%, half of it is coming from our business light industrial district, about 45%. And that's the area where we want to focus on. We want to focus as a town as trying to increase our commercial tax rate to put less stress on the residents for requesting overrides when we feel there's a need that we have to expand our revenue. What we're looking at here is our zoning map for the town of Newbury. And what I'd like you to focus on is the colors. The majority of the map is pale yellow. That is our residential and agricultural district. The area in the center, the magenta shaded area, that is our business light industrial district, which by far is our largest commercial district to encourage economic development in town. Now, there's little development currently in this area, even though it's a large zoning district. That's because, and we're all aware of, it lacks the infrastructure required. There's a lot of wetlands and there's poor soils. So a question that anybody who's watching this on TV might have is, well, why is this just a water project? Why isn't it a sewer project too? It really came down to timing. For one thing, this was a lot of work for one person to complete in a 1-year period. And we met with the town. I met with some of the town leaders, and we deemed water most critical at the time. So therefore, that was selected. Another reason is if we were to include the sewer component, there's only 2 things I can do. I could have went to the sewer commission and requested them to extend the sewer to Route 1. However, we could anticipate that we'd get the same response that we got for water. And the next would be I would want to do a cost estimate, a design of a wastewater treatment facility, and get an idea of how much it would cost if we had our own plant. The problem is in order to do that, you have to actually have a wastewater to design to treat. And each permit for each facility is different. It's according to the NEPDES permit from DEP. So therefore, it wouldn't have been possible to do that. So that's why this is just a water project. So again, the purpose is to evaluate the town's ability to provide a public water supply to encourage economic development. The goal is to come up with a cost estimate for the town to provide a public water supply and determine a return on investment. Now we're going right to the results. So the options that we have is option 1, the Byfield Water District. It would cost about $6.6 million, and we'd see a return on investment in 14 years. Option 2 is a new public water supply. That would cost $9.1 million and see a return on investment in 16 years. And option 3 would be for the city of Newburyport, which currently supplies water to Old Town and into Plum Island. which would cost $3.8 million plus a great benefit. And that would be a 10-year return on investment plus whatever the duration was for a great benefit. Now, reason why I'm saying great benefit is when the chair of the Board of Selectmen, Joe Story, the town administrator Tracy Blaze, and myself last year went over to the Water Commission of Newburyport. The mayor was also there. They said we'd have to provide them something of great benefit in order for them to even consider extending the water to our district. So therefore, if we wanted to move forward today, unless we came up with a great benefit, that's off the table. But we have two options. Now, getting back to the market value, what's the importance of this project? Well, first, we want to identify the ability to encourage economic development in the business light industrial district. We want to provide direction to the town when focusing future economic development efforts, and we wanted to respond to the demands of many of the voters who want to see an increase in the commercial tax base. Now, this is what I have down here was more for the professors because it made the paper a couple times a reference, so I put this in. But this just shows you that economic development is important, especially when it comes to elections. Both selectmen reference economic development and, well, I shouldn't say selectmen, both candidates for selectmen reference the business light industrial district for economic development. Technical depth. This is going through the tasks that I completed. What you see right here is a flow diagram that fits on one page of what I did for the entire year. And it is comprised of actually 10 tasks. First, I started off with task 1, determine the maximum build out of the business light industrial district. Once we can figure out what we can build out there, we have an idea of a potential tax rate and we have an idea of how much water is required. From that, we went through and I looked at the number of water sources. The goal was to be able to design a distribution system connecting from an existing public water supply to the district, and also evaluate these wells that I've been hearing about since I've been on the planning board for a potential public water supply in the future. See if there was any of them that could actually be established as a public water supply. Once I went through those, I designed a distribution system to a public water supply, and then I designed the water treatment facility. Now, as I said, we went to Newburyport first because they were right there at the district, and they said no. So then I went over and I asked the Byfield Water Commission whether they'd be interested. And they find this project mutually beneficial for both the town of Newbury and for themselves because they'd like to expand their customer base, and we need the water. However, they're not willing to pay for the extension, and they had a requirement, and they would need to. They do have the capacity to meet our needs. However, they need to increase their permit requirement, their permit from DEP. Okay. So once I went over and I met with them, I calculated the water demand required for my maximum build out, and I made a request. They said, you know, we have concerns about future demand in Byfield, and we'd like you to reduce that number. And a number was thrown out. And when I went back to reduce my design down to that number, I realized that in order to have confidence in this project, I really would have to do something similar that I did to the Business Light Industrial District to the Pearson Plaza District. So what I did was I took the same design criteria that I put on Route 1 to come up with, build the square footage for the commercial properties, industrial and retail, to the Pearson Plaza district. That's a commercial highway. We have multiple commercial highway districts, but to that specific one. And from my previous evaluation of their distribution system, I was also aware of how many houses that could currently be connected to the distribution system. However, they've chosen to be on private wells. So I include those households also because the lines ran right through their homes. So I reduced the number down to 80,000 gallons per day. Now, we already know that they can meet that need as of now because they could meet the higher request that I came in the first time by running their pumps an extra 5 hours. Once I went through and I had my design, I came up with a cost estimate. Now, for the wells, we had 4 wells that we looked at. I chose a well, went out and did a water quality sampling, and then a design for what water treatment facility. Came up with the cost. Once I came up with the cost of that, I did an engineering economic analysis. And then I was asked to also include the design for extending the Newburyport distribution system. Even though we know it's off the table, it was more of a curiosity. How much cheaper would it be since it's so close? So at this point, do you have any questions before I go through how I came up with this?
The 80,000 gallons per day, that is a projection. What is Byfield, what's the demand, or what are they pumping out today?
Or do they pay me out today? I do have that number. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can get it for you. Percentage-wise, how much basically has it increased? You're asking me?
Yeah.
So I do that on a number, but I don't have it on the top of my head.
And maybe I would like to ask you and the other board members, this great benefit that the people at Newburyport asked you and Joe when you went there, when all of the other extensions were made in this town, whether to Plum Island or down to here, do any of you remember what the deal was? What did Newburyport require from the town, or did they just do it?
Plum Island is the only one in my lifetime that that I know anything about. The water was put in over 100 years ago down High Road. But that was a state mandate. State mandate and a.
For health reasons.
Yeah, right, because clearly that was an outbreak of cholera and
Right.
typhus waiting to happen. So that was a mandate for health reasons, and what was it, no interest or very low interest loan? Close to no interest was provided.
Right.
And then
2%.
to be paid back by the betterment fees and so forth. How did Newburyport, Dave, you probably know, between Newburyport and Newbury, how did they set up the,
I actually know that.
you know that, okay?
Yeah. So
Okay.
Clarify your question. Make sure I answer it correctly. What is your question?
When either Plum Island or any other extension was made from the city of Newburyport to the town of Newbury,
Okay.
what was the nature of the deal with the city of Newbury?
So that was actually an act of legislation that I have a copy of way back when, and the agreement is at the time Newburyport was actually looking to increase their customer base. So they were looking for customers. They wanted people to connect, where things have changed now. So they went to I forget what year it is. I can call it up. I actually have it on my computer for you to look at. And there's actually an agreement in there, a line item that says if Newbury wants to buy back their distribution system, they have the option to do it at the cost at the time, way back when.
1930s?
I want to say,
Or was it earlier than that, in 19?
Really, that far back?
Well, yes, because when they came
I need to
to the
disconnect
Plum
this and I will
Island,
do it.
that issue was able to begin to be resolved because of this prior agreement. Right?
Yeah.
But essentially, I would say that the answer that the town got and that, okay, the first real serious request for water came when we were looking at the village of Little River.
Right.
Okay,
But
and
that was after,
that was after Plum Island.
After Plum Island.
Had happened, right?
right,
And essentially at that point, they were made a commercial offer by the developer,
right.
which, you know, the history of that is pretty well known, I think. But I think that led them, in all honesty, to an attitude.
Oh, no, I got the attitude,
Right,
I understand.
yeah.
But, so,
I
when,
have it right here for the Plum Island stuff. That was in '74. I have an act of legislation in '74. So I can print that, I can email that to
Yeah, that'd be
everybody
great.
later.
so when they actually did the work, did they bond for it? They do a revenue bond in the city of Newburyport to pay for it?
I think that's actually in here.
I don't think so. I thought that was basically,
Are we talking about what though now?
Plum
The
Island,
extension, the
I guess.
extension of water and sewer to Plum Island was, how was that paid for? Did they issue a revenue bond? Did they get state funds? Did they get federal funds?
I think it was a, never mind. I think the answer I think is in here when you send it to you. It's like
Okay.
3 pages.
Okay, fine.
We can find it out. All right. So go back to from current slide. All right, so this,
I think the quick answer to your question is it was a loan from the state and we paid the initial interest on the loan as communities.
Newbury.
Yes, and Newburyport, okay, in other words, it was a shared project at a cost to each of the communities. And we carried on our annual budget for a period a cost that we would eventually recoup when the betterment charges
Started to come in.
started to come in. But, so there was a point at which the community
Paid.
voted essentially to incur a debt,
Right,
which,
even though the revenues weren't there, but they had to
Right.
do it because of the state mandate.
yes, yeah, right.
Pretty strong.
so
Yeah, exactly. But let me ask you a quick question.
Now-
I got a little lost in the Byfield water project.
we're gonna go through that in more detail. This was just
Okay.
kind of a
All right.
layout of
No,
kind
that's
of the
fine.
map that we're,
That's okay.
direction we're going. So right now, this is task 1, the maximum build out of the business light industrial district. And what I was looking at is looking at the business light industrial district, looking at lots that had frontage along Route 1, that had clusters of upland that you could have a large development on. And there were 4 sites that were identified. From that, we made a number of assumptions. One is that not, we should go back to this. So for each site, such as Site 2, that's multiple parcels that are owned by multiple owners. Made the assumption that these properties could be assembled and be developed as one. We made the assumption that the septic systems were possible, even though we know that there are poor soils for the point of this project. We're just looking at water right now, and that the septic systems would be under the parking lots. And then we applied the design criteria for the zoning bylaws and the Mass DEP setbacks for watercourse and wetlands. And so once we do this, we go from, for the 4 sites, 191 acres down to 82 acres. So example is for Site 1. This is the Bashaw property. It's actually 3 parcels. And when you apply those assumptions and also the design criteria, you'll see a 51% reduction on the lot. Site 2, you see a 45% reduction. Site 3, this is the Dragowski property. You see a 75% reduction because the lot's so wet. Site 4, this is the Millen property, and you see a 53%. And that just comes to show you, when you look at our large business light industrial district, visually it's quite large. However, there's so many wetlands in there. There really isn't much to develop. From that now, what I had to do is I had to look at the sites to determine whether or not they needed a road to access it, if there was a deep lot. Oh, this is the lot coverage, excuse me. So now how we have lot coverage, you can't have more than 50% lot coverage. So Site 1 was reduced. No, excuse me. Site 2 was reduced down
They're all 50%.
to, yeah, no, right now, 1,
Looked like 50.
50% setbacks, yes, okay. So Site 1 and Site, the Millen property needed an access road. So that square footage was subtracted from the overall property. And then Professor Weiss here helped me with this development formula. Now, we don't know what is going to be developed on site. We don't have a crystal ball. I've spoken to the property owners. I've spoken to the town leaders. No one knows. It's a function of the economy. So how we can make an educated guess dependent on what is successful south of Route 1. And this is the formula that we used. Now, I'm not saying that this is what is going in here. I'm saying that we're making an educated assumption for the point of coming up with a water demand and also for the potential tax rate. And this is what it's based off of. Any questions? Okay. So from this, I can calculate the water demand for each use. I can get a square footage for each retail use once I come out with the subtract the parking, subtract the setbacks. And what I come up with is an overall water demand for peak flow and also an estimated annual tax revenue. Now, that annual estimated tax revenue was provided to me by the chair of the Board of Assessors, that's Bud Kelly. He worked with his consultant to come up with this. And as we all know, an assessment value, it's a complicated formula. So he was working off of just the type of use, the building area, the square footage, and also the lot size to come up with that value. Next, I went on to task 2, which was evaluating the water sources. Now, we already went through that. I spoke to Newburyport. They said no. Byfield was interested in it. Then I moved on to the wells. There were 4 wells identified. One actually, and I'll go over to the map. You'll see the blue circles on the top north portion of the map. Now, the Guilford well, we knew it was a Newburyport. However, I had heard multiple things about there being wells on the Newbury side of the municipal line. So that's what I wanted to evaluate. What are these wells that are Newbury? And what they are monitoring wells when they were looking at determining the capacity of the Guilford well. So those wells cannot be established as a public water supply. So that eliminated that well. Also, the well at the Newbury Elementary School, which was actually, when you look at our water protection overlay district, that was one of the wells that helped define that boundary. That well has actually been demolished. Now, the question came up, since that well's not there, should we redefine the overlay protection district, the water overlay protection district? And I would say no, because the intent of the water overlay protection district is not to define a radius around a potential well, but it's actually meant to define your aquifer. And we don't know where the aquifer is because we haven't done a hydraulic study. They're expensive. So we know that there was a well at one time, and that's why I don't recommend that we go back and remove that. So we went through Guilford, we went through the Newbury Elementary School. The next, there's a well over on the west side of Route 1, over on towards the Bashaw property. That well does still exist according to, I spoke to Paul Colby, who is the water superintendent in Newburyport, and he gave me an estimated location of the well. He had found it a number of years ago. However, the problem with that site is that it does not meet the Zone 1 requirements, and I'll get into that further. That's when you establish a well for a public water supply. So that left us with the Bashaw well, which is actually the well that was selected because it didn't have any issues, and it has great capacity according to the 1970 reports. So this is actually the Bashaw well, where I was talking about the Zone 1. When you establish a public water supply, a well, you need a 400-foot radius around it, and you need to own all that property, and you have to have limited activity. So as you see, as we know, that's Mass Electric's corridor. We also have, depending on when this actually falls, we might hit Mass Highway of Route 1 and also the commuter rail. So that was off the table. The Bashaw well is the one that I selected, and that meets the requirements right now for Zone 1. I did get permission from the property owner to take water quality samples to base my design on. He's not willing to sell his property, but he didn't mind me doing this since it was for my education. So as I said, we selected the Byfield Water District and also the Bashaw well as our water sources. Designing the distribution system from Byfield. And there's your flow rates that you asked me for, right there. So my designs are off of peak flows. And I requested, when I added an 80,000 gallons per day to that 380,000. Okay. So this is the information I was provided with from them. I don't think I need to go through my hydraulic calculations with you. This was more for the professors, for the criteria for the program. But I'll go right to the proposed layout. So what we'll see is right now on, I'm gonna walk over here. This is Orchard this is Maple Terrace, wait, Marsh Meadow. Right, it's Marsh Meadow, Jefferson's right,
Yeah,
Marsh
just-
Meadow.
yeah.
And so the existing line is the blue, and the red is the proposed. And it's about 1.4 miles from the existing pipeline to the intersection, the bottom at Route 1. What this, and what the Byfield Water Commission also requested was that we, if we went forward with this, that we would have to have a storage tank, install a storage tank. And that affected the cost. So what we have here is, oh, this is proposed design 1. Because originally, remember I told you I went with them for one proposed, I should go down to this one. Hold on a second. There we go. So this was originally I made a request for one flow rate. They asked me to reduce it down, so I reduced it down to 80,000. So what that did was, when we were looking at the maximum build-up for Route 1, that actually reduced it down to 12% because of the lack of water. It reduced the potential tax rate down to just under $1 million a year. This is about 14,000 feet of 10-inch ductile iron pipe. And by reducing, I also moved the proposed, which you're getting the storage tank used to be over at the old town forest. At first I proposed putting on town property to save purchasing land. However, it's much cheaper just to buy a piece of property than it is to run the additional linear foot of pipe. The design of the water treatment facility. The water had higher levels of arsenic and manganese, which is common for this area in New England. It's natural occurring. It's not a man-made pollutant. The interesting thing about this option versus the Byfield is Byfield is giving us basically, they will provide us water, but we're capped. We're not getting as much as we could use if we had maximum build out. The well itself has over, according to the hydraulic reports from 1970s, a potential of 1 million gallons per day. That could actually be used not only to service Route 1, but also service other areas of Old Town that are having problems with the septic system if Newburyport didn't want to extend their water down there. I'm going to skip. These are more of the, well, I can go through this. So arsenic is a health concern. Manganese is more of a nuisance when we're talking about staining of our clothes and our toilets. So in order to treat the arsenic, what I'm proposing in my water treatment facility is an oxidation filtration treatment facility using green sand. A number of calculations were done, which I'm not going to go through, and I have a layout, a proposed layout of the water treatment facility. I proposed that we would use the existing well, purchase the property for the Zone 1, then run the pipe then that's that circle up top. If you can see that cyan circle, that's the Zone 1 area around the well. Then run the pipe down to Hanover Street, where for this project I placed the water treatment facility. The problem that I did not anticipate is when you're dealing with the treatment facility for the arsenic, you normally send that to your wastewater treatment plant. However, we don't have a wastewater treatment plant, so this required to design lagoons to actually send the sludge over there and dehydrate it with the evaporation, and then you'd have to haul it out. Also, that was required is we still needed a proposed water storage tank, so that was also a cost that was added.
So, Kathleen, the second line there says 9,705 feet of 10 inches. Is that the red line coming from the well itself?
Yeah. So.
Oh, and then going all the way down, I see.
So
Okay.
we have our. I'm sorry, Eric. We have our proposed line, just like before for the other option, and we have our storage tank, which is the same. However, now we have this additional line going up here. So this is the well. We have to buy the property for that. We have to buy the property to run the pipe. We have to buy the property for the treatment facility, for the lagoons, and for the.
So the amount of piping is more than it is for, oh, no, it's not.
No, it's less. It's less. What brings up the cost is actually the treatment facility.
Right. The distance to the to the, water tank is only 1.4 miles, you said, but then I didn't.
No, it was 1.4 miles from the existing
From the
end of the distribution system.
then
And I have a
plus-
table
plus you
coming
have
down
this
here.
red line.
I actually have a table of comparisons coming up. We can see that. But one of the big costs besides the treatment facility is also the land that's required. We'd have to require to purchase also. Okay. And one thing to note that the more water you treat, the cheaper it is per gallon. So right now, this was designed just to treat the 123,000 gallons per day, according to when I did my maximum build out. But say if Newbury wanted to expand it to Old Town, where people didn't have water, that cost would go up. The overall cost would go up, but the cost to treat the water per gallon would be a little bit less. I didn't have time to go through and do that type of evaluation. This was the design for Newburyport. And what you'll see here coming down Hanover Street is that blue line. That's the existing distribution line. It purposely stops right there at our Business Light Industrial District. And what you'll see is the red line going up, and we've actually extended it past what the other two proposed pipelines have in order to connect it around, loop it around to Newburyport. Let's see. So here you have your comparisons between your total linear pipe, your capacities, and your cost estimates for each use. Now the cost for, this was actually a good exercise because many people were very helpful when coming up with the cost estimates. I had Tim Leonard, who's the director of the Highway Department. He helped me understand what the requirements for pavement for Newburyport and also for the Highway Department. Warren Manter, local contractor who's installed water pipe over in Byfield, he helped me figure out how I was going to cost it out, because the problem in Byfield when you put in pipe is we have ledge up there. Coming up with the cost for that. Paul Colby helped me. So there's probably about 10 individuals that helped me establish this. John Eric White, the city engineer in Newburyport, also the city engineer over in Ipswich, went through their cost estimates for a precinct job. So I have confidence in my numbers here. And I've also put in a number of contingencies, such as the contingency for overhead, contingency for ledge, contingency for prevailing wage, engineers and owners contingencies. Now, when calculating the return of the investment, what we looked at was first is how long it would cost to construct whether it just be the pipe or the treatment facility, whatever the job was. And then Mr. Weiss advised me it would take about 5 years for the maximum build out for the Business Light Industrial District. So I allowed 5 years for that. And then I looked at, okay, once those 6 years went by, or however it was to construct the first, the project, how long would it take to make our money back that we spent on the project, and how long would it take back to pay off the money that we lost the first 6 years? And that's how I came up with these values. I don't think anybody wants me to walk through them, do they? It's pretty. Now, as far as leadership, I guess more sake for anybody that's watching this on TV, this project was conducted with only $600 that was granted to me by Northeastern University. That was the cost to sample the water at the well. And I coordinated with about over 100 individuals from not only Newburyport, but a number of entities. In summary, it will cost the town of Newbury about $6.6 million to provide a public water supply and let's see a return on investment in 14 years with an additional tax revenue to what we receive right now of $924,000 annually. So you'll increase that 3% commercial property tax would increase up to 13%.
That's still a single rate.
Yes, that's with our current tax rate. Any questions?
So actually, that was what I was trying to calculate how much that, when you had said 3% of 17 million, I was trying to figure out what that figure was, and then the differential, but you're just giving, it's 924? Something
Yeah,
like that,
so
almost $1 million.
That's on top of what we bring in right now. I've already subtracted
So
that
that's
out.
in addition to whatever
Yeah.
we're pulling in
Yeah.
right now.
So it was what I calculated from the potential tax revenue, and then I subtracted what we're already having to see what the actual difference would be, net difference.
This doesn't identify which of your options.
This right here would be the Byfield option. Well, you want me to go back to the top?
Well, okay, but all I'm looking at is that I think the Byfield option makes a number of assumptions which are very questionable.
Well, the reason why I picked the Byfield one wasn't that it was the best choice, but just because it's the cheapest choice at the time.
Well, the cheapest choice is Newburyport.
No, well, but as of right now, that's off the table because not necessarily because you don't know what that great benefit would be. That is the easiest choice. I'll give you that, and I think that's what everybody would hope.
You know, I mean, I know this is politics, perhaps not planning and water, but wouldn't the obvious great benefit be the $1 million, the 1,000,000 gallon a day well? That's the bargaining chip we have. We have the water. They don't.
Well, technically, the property owner has the water.
Well, yes,
Yes,
but
yeah.
we know that in the long
So
term.
if you
But
could,
I'm confused. Are you then assuming that Newburyport would avail itself of the Bashaw well?
now,
Did you assume that?
I'm sorry.
Under the Newburyport option, did you assume that Newburyport would be using the Bashaw well?
No,
No.
no. And all these three options are possible. The only thing that we haven't identified, and that's why I'm assuming right now, at this current moment, it's off the table, is what exactly is a great benefit to Newburyport? They were offered, $4 million for the Little River project to connect to their water and sewer. And questions of whether or not that was actually going to move forward in town. I've heard different things, so I'm not sure.
How close is the last bit of Newburyport water to the Bashaw well? It's right
You
down
mean like
Parker, right down Parker, am I right?
Yeah.
Is it
Not
Parker?
far.
Yeah.
Hanover or whatever that, it's not far at all, is it?
No.
I couldn't tell you where it stops on Parker Street, but it's fairly close.
I mean, but David, your instincts are right. I had thought of the well as a bargaining chip and also potentially, a portion of the initial tax revenues that might come in. I mean,
That's what I was thinking of.
either one of
Yes.
those things might be a way to start a conversation with the city to get it off. You're talking about great benefit, well, how about these ideas? And it seems to me that that's not a bad idea to try to revisit that.
Well, maintenance-wise, and John would agree with me, I'm sure, that it's to their benefit to loop the current distribution system they have.
Their benefit to what?
It's Newburyport's benefit to loop the Hanover
Yeah,
Street right now
absolutely,
for
yeah.
maintenance reasons.
Oh, yeah.
And also for operation reasons.
That is a definite benefit, plus they're gonna be selling the water. I mean, they're not
Increase
giving
the
the
cost
water
of
away
it.
for nothing. There's an income of some sort from that.
Yeah, and when Joe and I and Tracy went over there, I listed out all the benefits right now, and so they're aware of them.
So when you say that you spoke with the property owner and he doesn't want to sell, but he allowed you to do your analysis, right?
Mm-hmm. I wasn't authorized to discuss whether or not we
Right,
were
right,
thinking to do that.
and you shouldn't have, but, this is right next to, isn't that Tender Crops, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Stuff.
it's on
So,
that property, yeah.
So he just rents that?
Yeah.
no,
Well, no,
that's
he
Matt's
does.
property.
Matt, it is Matt's
Yeah,
property?
that's Matt's
Oh, you
property.
see the property lines?
Thank you, right.
His access is off the right of way, the old railroad right of way.
This is, there's a house here, and there's a house here, and there's a
Right.
driveway to access the farm
Right.
back here.
Right.
This is fenced off.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like a precise location? You're,
But I would think we have a number of things which have changed in the last 5+ years, which would make the kind of I think part of the problem is that we have some of the same actors involved in the ask between the two communities, and some of those actors just don't get on. And I think that the response that you actually got from the Water Commission was not a response from the Water Commission as a engineering undertaking, but it was a political response.
Well, and what I've learned through this project is there's a number of people that have to sign off of it, and we didn't talk to the city council.
Right.
You didn't meet with the mayor either, did you?
The mayor was at this
The
meeting.
mayor was at the meeting.
She was the one that said that we'd have to provide a great benefit.
She didn't
And-
say what that would be.
But let me ask you, when that was said, did it, no one just, everyone was silent? No one-
When that said, that's when Joe was quick on his feet, and he said, "Well, what if the property that they were trying to do the transit over the
TOD, the
Yeah.
transit, yeah?
he said, what if we extend Newbury's property to your project since no bids were submitted? And remember, Martha, you
Right,
and
right,
I
right,
met and looked
right.
at that property, and we tried to figure out whether or not we could. However, it wasn't doable due to the wetlands
Right.
and a number of
Well,
other
so-
issues.
So there was some idea of getting a discussion going.
Yeah, they were very polite. They weren't rude. I mean, they weren't hostile. I was a little bit worried, but they weren't. I think what it really comes down to is the Newburyport option would make the most sense. For one, they're already in, if you look at this town as 3 distinct areas, Byfield, Old Town, and Plum Island, Newburyport is already in Old Town. They're already going down High Road, they're going down Green Street, down Hanover Street. They're there. They're already on Plum Island. So the majority of our town, they are already servicing. In addition, they're right there to where we need to be. But what we need to do is we have to figure out what that great benefit is. The reason why that wasn't selected is because it's undefined. And when it's undefined, that is infinite to me. So that's why I crossed that one out and I went to the 2 more open options. And these are whether or not, if you're just looking to provide water to the business light industrial district and you're not worried about the rest of the town, then you go look at Byfield. If you are concerned about the other parts of town where we have heard that some of the septic systems and wells are having issues, you might want to consider whether or not in the future we're going to need public water supply throughout Old Town.
Well, I didn't realize the capacity of the Bashaw well. I mean, 1 million gallons a day is a lot of capacity. And if utilizing the technical ability and the financial ability of the city, together with giving them that resource, gives us a lot more than the Byfield option, doesn't it?
The original objections, as I understood them 8, 9 years ago to the so-called Bashaw well, was that it had enough chemical issues to make it expensive water,
It's not-
relatively speaking.
Well, I wouldn't say chemicals, but yeah,
Well, I mean,
constituents,
arsenic,
yeah.
chemical, but put it this way, that it was looked at during the whole run-up to the village at Little River. And it was also looked at that time with a possible 40B housing development, okay, which would have had to have had water. And at that point, it looked as though that was going to be a problem. In other words, it would need, and it probably still will, need an auxiliary, a treatment plant.
Right, well, that's
Because Newburyport,
I just designed.
Current
That's
treat-
what
yeah.
your analysis is.
right,
Yeah.
Newburyport's current treatment plant can't handle it.
Um,
I think.
And I don't know if I think everybody's aware of this. This particular well, the Bashaw well, was utilized by Newburyport for a public water supply. Were you aware of that?
No.
It was taken offline after a couple months because of complaints due to the water quality.
Was it the hardness or what? What was the complaint?
I think it was the staining.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think it was
the
staining.
manganese
Yeah.
kicked in, okay.
Mhm. Now, at that time, the arsenic levels weren't an issue because EP has increased the requirement, actually decreased the requirement, the thresholds. So that's why.
So when
before-
was that?
Gosh,
I mean, why would we
90s.
think that
90s.
that the taste and the color issue has improved?
It wouldn't.
It wouldn't.
It wouldn't
no.
improve. It's
But
no
that's
different
why
than,
she's treating it.
it's no different than my house
All
or
right,
your
so-
house.
but
Don't you
so,
know?
so would your proposed treatment solve that?
Yeah,
Why
that's-
weren't they treating it back in 20 years ago? just
The
weren't.
reason why they didn't move forward with it is because, like David said, the cost to just treat that one well and build a plant at that
Okay.
site and operate their other site was
Okay.
too
It
expensive.
wouldn't make any economic sense.
No.
But now you see you've got some other sort of things happening.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I don't know the details here, but Newburyport has just invested a lot of money in its water treatment plant and in its sewer plant, okay? Both of those plants, but particularly the sewer plant, is, you know, and I'm sure they must have thought about this, so that's why I have questions about it. It's in the new FEMA floodplains.
Yeah.
It is.
And so, I mean, they're looking at some issues down the road where,
Interesting.
you know, where I think some of the economics of how they're working currently may change. It's always been interesting to me that communities, and I don't know whether, you know, how this is true in other states or counties, but for a community to have a separate water and sewer commission, to me, doesn't make much sense.
What do you mean a separate water sewer
It
commission?
should be the Water and Sewer Commission.
Right.
one.
In other words, well, water and sewer has, you weren't talking to the same people who run the sewers in your report, right?
In my experience, but like the South Essex Sewer Commission, they're different. They're separate than the Water Commission.
Yeah.
There are, Newburyport has
Yeah.
two commissions.
Right.
So
Water and
that's
sewer,
normal
like
to
Dave
be
says,
separate.
yeah.
Yes.
Right. Well, to me, that's a very strange way to run, you know, essentially what is an input-output system, basically.
But it's an historically common way.
That's what I'm
sure.
saying.
And I think it might be more rural. There's the Boston Water and Sewer Commission, the Massachusetts
Yeah.
Water and Sewer.
Yeah.
But that's
Right.
much larger. That's a much larger
But
authority.
I think David is right. In a perfect world, it would be one commission. It would be a public services commission.
So, I mean, I think this is all extremely interesting stuff, and I think the question that we have, I mean, I think that is that what do we do with this? You know, Kathleen's presented it to the Board of Selectmen. 2 of the selectmen thought it was very interesting. Do we have discussions with Tracy and et cetera, and talk about, you know, a number of things, initiatives, seeing if we can get state money to help us get maybe more detail and analysis on this?
The Merrimack Valley Commission had also offered assistance if we needed
What
it.
kind of assistance would they offer, David, do you know?
They were offering to, when we needed to speak to Newburyport, whether we
Yeah,
were involved.
originally, they were offering mediation.
Well, I think
Between the two
I'd accept that in a
communities.
heartbeat.
Right, well, you know, the problem was it never got far enough off the ground for it to happen. I think a couple of things would be true here, that, we are in, I think, first of all, I would say that we maybe need to look a little more closely at our potential development areas and not just our business like
Zoning
industrial
into that one
district, right? In other words.
I agree with you, David. I
You
do.
mean further expansion of
Yes,
beyond this?
Be it that or be it residential, I mean, the
Our
fact-
needs, basically our
Yeah,
water needs.
What are our water needs?
Yes.
Because I would, in all honesty, feel that I can understand why Byfield Water District sees this as an opportunity. But at the same time, I think the very constraints that exist for that water district are not going to change, and they're probably going to get greater. In other words, their well capacities may be over time limited by the fact that we have some stuff going on with the Parker River and the state looking at, in fact, how much is coming out of the Parker River. You know, one of the things we have to, I think, understand is we're not an island. We are, in fact, you know, we have abutting communities who draw from some of the same water resources that we do. I would suggest that we need to find out whether essentially a cooperative venture between two communities, one of which has a resource, a well, and the other of which has a distribution system, is something that the state could help bring about in some manner, shape, or
It's
form.
I mean, those are the things that Bilecki at the,
Right.
he wants
Yeah.
to do that stuff.
Exactly, and I think, you know, if we sort of knock on the door and say, we'd like to explore this.
They will
because,
give us a
you know,
hearing.
Yeah. I
They
think
will not say, you can't, we don't wanna talk to you.
Right, and I think, we need to move away from some of the attitudes in the past, which understandably came out of some really unfortunate things that happened during the whole Plum Island water issue, and sort of continue to hang over some heads here too anyway, in terms of, you know, the fact that the system may be less than perfect.
Well, going way back, even before Plum Island, there was some of this going on
Yeah.
between the two
Oh, you can
communities.
see that. I
Pardon?
mean,
Oh, yeah,
I
there's-
see some
there's-
attitudes.
There's
of,
baggage
oh,
there.
boy,
Yeah.
it's tough. It's
Yeah.
tough.
I don't think at the moment there's a lot of the old timers left on the Water Commission. I remember George Lawler just passed away, and
He
he
did, right.
he's
was-
been on there forever.
Oh, he had.
Are those elected positions?
Where,
No.
They're
Wait.
appointed, mayor
Appointed,
appoints them.
mayoral
yeah.
appointees?
Yeah.
remind them we're being recorded. Just reminding everyone we're on TV. That's all.
I guess my question then is, then moving forward, is it that we ought to have a discussion with Tracy, and see what her disposition is? I mean, it seems to me it's a town-wide town issue,
Oh,
not
yeah.
just us.
Yeah.
And so maybe getting her perspective on it. She was at your presentation.
Well, she was involved in, she's my advisor.
She's your
very,
advisor.
very familiar
So
with my
let-
project.
I think that we ought to have a discussion with her. I'd be happy to do that. Do you want to, a couple of us meet with her and just see what?
I'd be interested to
what
sit in.
next steps? Does that
Okay.
make sense to the board?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So let's do
Right.
that. Just get her perspective. But I think it's exciting. I mean, $1 million a year on a potentially $3 million investment, it's not bad.
Yeah,
bad.
that's a whole other.
Well, the,
Oh, now,
no, but
now
when you-
there's
when
no
you-
doubt that the analysis that was done and the build-out analysis is somewhat optimistic. I
Right.
mean, to assume that you're gonna get that amount of build-out 5 years after you've put the system in is optimistic.
But I was looking at maximizing the property with
that's
as
right.
much building space as possible, which we know is not likely to happen. Plus, we also have the issue of septic systems or sewer.
But what I would see, you see, is if we could have even the very clear promise of a water system, okay, which was largely available to the town east of Route 1, right? Or east and west, but I mean essentially in the areas we're talking about. That would change the whole development potential of the town. And that doesn't necessarily have to be achieved.
Just through the BLI.
Yeah. It means, for example, that this becomes a community which has some flexibility, but right now we have very little flexibility.
So do we have any, I mean, one of our dilemmas is we've looked at development opportunities aside from BLI, and not just, but if you look at the residential potential, there's not a lot of density that we think is gonna be moving forward, am I right?
Well, things change quite rapidly. There's a very large field just south of the BLI where the current owner just died. And who knows what that family is gonna wanna do with.
You're talking about Littlefield? Talking about Littlefield?
property.
That's a big, that's a big
Which
piece
one
of
is
property. Littlefield, the old, you know the one.
The huge field
On
that
Orchard.
runs from Boston Road south on
Yeah,
the
Boston Road.
west side,
Best hard cider.
yeah.
North
And
End,
plus
North
there's
End, Six
there's
Counties.
other
Couple
acres.
hundred acres.
Well, there's other acreage on the other side of Middle Road.
Yeah.
Um,
Of course, that could be easily serviced by Byfield.
Well, true, yes. In fact, that
In
might
fact, it
make-
would be.
That might,
That's-
see, that's what I'm saying, that this is a very,
Isn't that in their district?
No, well, it's just at the
Well,
edge of
it's
it.
outside.
He knows
I
the
think it's just at
district.
the edge, isn't it?
I think some of it may be and some of it isn't, yeah. But the interesting thing is that that's what happens, is that suddenly this, you know, the numbers in the ballgame here could change. Things don't stay,
I think it's very crucial, though, that you do an analysis of what the water demands are of Old Town before you move forward. The water demands of Old Town,
Oh,
not just that one district.
Yeah.
Because if there are demands like over on Pine Island or down Cottage Road, you have, your
Well,
water
the-
demand increases.
Right, but do we know what those are? I don't know what they are. I mean, I know I don't have water. But-
right, but the interesting thing is that, you know, across the road and behind the hill from you, there's other developable land, particularly for residential
Right.
there. So
Right.
you could see, you know, essentially what's the Old Farm Way? You could see several Old Farm Ways.
You still there?
Still there. I have one question.
Mm.
In your presentation, maybe I missed it, it seems like a simple.
Oh, no. You pick this. You need to,
I gotta speak.
yeah,
It's for the people on TV.
TV.
Hi, everybody. So the one question is, what's the cost in drilling a new well? What are the ramifications or the limitations of doing that and moving that well in the position that then limits piping and putting it in the ultimate location? I know that from my experience of drilling wells, you know, a few feet makes a difference. So, but what are the legal ramifications or?
I don't have the cost estimate for it. I know it must be quite expensive because Newburyport's still trying to figure out how to use the Guilford well, trying to tap it in. But I do not know the
Is
cost.
it permitting?
The problem I think that really comes about is not so much, well, there's the cost of drilling, but also the location. You have to get that zone 1 requirement, that 400-foot radius. You want to be out of wetlands.
But if you're buying it from someone now at a certain cost and there's a more favorable property at a cost in a location, I was just wondering why.
Yeah, it's a logical question. I understand what you're saying. Yes. They did do, Paul Colby did a study for the town of Newbury. I don't know if it was how long ago, but he gave me a copy. And he actually explored a number of locations of where they thought there'd be a potential good well site. They looked at Old Town. They looked up at Spencer Pierce, because Spencer Pierce is more sandy. That problem was the historical,
Sure.
what is
Yeah,
the
it's a-
historical, what is it, the,
There would
Not commission, but whatever it is, yeah. and then, Old
Historic New
Town.
England.
So really, it got knocked down it came back to Bashar area.
Is that right?
Yep, excellent.
Right, any other comments about Kathleen's presentation? Do we need to take any action here, or just the comment that Kathleen and I will go talk to Tracy? Is that,
I think
it's not
that's-
action,
yeah, I
it's
don't-
just, that's what we're gonna do, and we'll report back as soon as we've seen her. But I think it's all very interesting stuff. I mean, it could change the whole way things happen.
I think it might be useful if you, and I mean, given the stage in your degree, I don't want to put you to more work, but if it's possible relatively easily to, rather than summarizing the project, summarize the conclusions in relation to Newbury's circumstances, if you see what I, in other words, to some degree, the kind of discussion we've just had, because that would be very useful to share with MVPC people and to get some suggestions as to where we take this.
So basically
state.
just an executive summary of the results?
Yeah, but I think also looking, maybe perhaps exploring a little bit more, and I can help you do that, and that is, you know, the sort of neighborhood stuff and so on.
I actually just picked up a new project I'm working on the next 2 months. So
Okay, well, I'm not looking,
maybe
yeah.
after that I
Right.
could. But I have a hydrology project for the town, for the city of Newburyport I'm working on.
Okay, no problem.
But we can look into that.
Is it available on PowerPoint or something?
What she just showed?
What you just, I mean, I was.
I have to send it actually to the selectmen. I was gonna talk to Martha about that.
I'd like-
I wasn't sure if I should put the whole presentation up there or not.
have we seen, well, you skipped some stuff, I know, but have we seen most of it?
Yeah, I didn't get into the technical calculations with you or the justifications for my assumptions.
No, okay.
I
You
would
wanna,
think ask Tracy and ask Joe what their thoughts are. I don't see there was anything damaging to us there. You're not really making any presumption of
No,
action
it's,
on the report.
no, no,
it's all
It's
facts,
pretty,
factual.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's, what you see is what you get, and it's not, I can't see how it would be to our disadvantage.
I agree.
I
Okay,
would talk to, certainly before you did it, talk to Tracy and Joe
About,
about putting it up on our
oh, they've already
website.
asked me to.
Oh, they have?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
they've asked
Well,
me
that
to.
takes care of that, doesn't it?
all right, old business, site plan review bylaw subcommittee progress report.
Night, Eric.
Good night,
I'll try
Eric.
to, I'll try to find out a cost. That question I actually had for myself, but I never got around. I gotta call a driller. I don't know. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Site plan review, Martha or Kathleen?
Sorry.
Just a quick update on the,
We met again last week and are continuing to go forward, going through all the comments that had been provided by board members and also some of the sample site plan review bylaws from neighboring communities. Kathleen, is
Yeah.
there anything else you want to
So,
say?
what we were gonna do first is go through the comments from each,
each-
board member,
yeah.
and then go through and address some of the questions and look at other, like she said, the site plans.
okay. Do you have any sense about how long this might take?
Well, I know that my life's about to get really busy, so,
You'd like to get it done?
yeah.
And we talked about a time frame of, I think, the second meeting in November to have something ready to present to
That
the
would be
full board.
fine. Second
So-
meeting in November would be fine. Okay. Stormwater rules and regs, John and Martha?
Well, I've got, I think when the subdivision rules, the subdivision rules and regs are ready to be put out to everybody. I think we're talking one public hearing for the two of them, just for economic sake. And it will be a joint hearing where the Concom is dealing with the stormwater and the planning board is dealing with the subdivision rules and regs. We discussed this, right?
Well, I don't remember the discussion on the public hearing as much as I thought we were still in the, getting the comments back from Doug and the Board of Health and folks like that, and have we, and that we were gonna have a final product that we were all comfortable with, and then we,
That's a given, that has to happen.
and then we were gonna have a discussion about where this process sits, whether or not it sits with us or the Concom.
Yeah.
And we were waiting for
I
those.
was quite happy. to
That's what I've
accept-
heard, and I think that Tracy seemed okay.
Yeah, I think. that
So it
makes
was just a
great-
matter of, I guess it's just putting one foot in front of each other on this thing.
Yeah.
But,
So the only comments I've gotten were the ones from Ed when he met with us.
Yeah.
Have you gotten comments back from
Yeah,
anybody else?
I've got one from one of the engineers who basically had no comment. Okay, it boiled down to that simple. The other engineer that I gave it to has not yet responded. I'm
Okay.
on his track at the moment, but I haven't caught up with him.
okay, so I guess we'll just keep on putting this on and we'll see where we are, but we'd like to, I think, probably get this resolved before the end of the year to make sure that we know who's gonna be responsible for it
Yeah.
and who's gonna do the
Right.
Well,
reviews.
that has
Right.
to go to town meeting, the term.
If we
terms of-
shift it.
Yeah.
Right,
it
right,
has to
right.
go to town
And
meeting.
but not this fall, it would go in
It
the
doesn't-
spring.
No,
Yeah.
it couldn't make it this
Right.
fall.
Okay,
But I would really like to have both of them done by the end of March.
okay. Oh, okay.
The reason being, I've been saying we've been working on this for at least 2 years.
I think so.
To the EPA. And it'd
Okay.
be really good to say we actually did it.
All right, on 101, you two plus Doug went and met with our friend Angelo?
We did.
And so, how did that go?
Not at all surprisingly.
No, huh?
His position is, he really thought he was doing the right thing. He didn't understand the ramifications of what he did. I think Doug and I made it fairly clear to him that when he does anything that is not on the plan, he needs to talk to Doug,
Right,
okay, and get guidance whether it's a big deal or not a big deal.
right.
He did promise to start immediately, he had worked a deal with Billy to start removing the pile of wrap that was out back. When I went out after we talked, John, I went out and had a look. I don't know if I got back to you or not that day.
No,
but
that's okay.
most of that wrap is gone.
Oh, it is?
The big pile.
Oh, that's
Now,
good.
at that time, I haven't been back. I should have been before tonight's meeting, but he hadn't started removing the wrap that was in place, which we told Angelo that had to happen.
That was about a week ago?
Pardon me?
It was about a week ago we did that walking tour?
I'm sorry?
When
Yes.
did we?
Yeah, it was last Wednesday.
Last Wednesday, okay. Just my own perspective. When we
Oh,
met.
the site visit of 101, okay. The other one, yeah, 160 something.
67.
Yeah, but that, he had made a start.
Okay.
He'd done the right thing so far.
I mean, he said all he was gonna do this year was blast, right? No construction? Remember when he was here?
He's thinking in terms of construction starting in the spring. He's talking that way with site grading over the
Okay.
winter. With site grading being nothing you do with a grader. It's all blasting.
Well, I really am reluctant to, but I have a feeling that we have to stay on this
Oh,
guy.
absolutely, yeah.
I don't think we're gonna get, anything voluntarily.
I do want to make a comment on that site. When I drove by the other night, all the trucks were coming back from their job sites. And what bothers me about that site is it looks like Sled Road is his driveway because there's not a defined entrance into his site. It's basically the whole frontage along Sled Road is his entrance. And I don't know in the future if there's some way, somehow we can make sure that there's a defined entrance. I think that's one of the issues that really bothers me when I look at it.
Well, under the site plan, the ultimate site plan, it is pretty well defined.
It is defined, and he just
Yeah.
hasn't, he's just made a mess of it
Yeah,
right now.
At this point, there's no way of telling, and you can access the site anywhere from Sled Road.
Right, right.
And until he starts getting roadway put down in place and parking area put in place.
And I guess I'm willing to wait to see what his real construction looks like, and then, or maybe when he starts construction next spring, we ought to make sure that he takes a look at his plans.
Well, you should, I mean, what still bothers me is that there was no indication that the stone wall was going to be coming out.
right,
There were
and we
gonna
talked about
be,
that.
you know, two cuts through the stone wall accessing the drive around his property, so that definition would have stayed
Would
there.
have been there, would have been.
And it's all gone. So,
Okay.
Yeah, because currently, the plan is to have actually the access to his site from the improved Sled Road.
right.
So
Right.
that would mean there has to be a corner pit to his property.
Right.
Currently,
No,
who knows where that is?
there's a new sled road going in,
Yeah.
and then he has access off of that.
Right, well, right now, picking up on what Martha said, what's worried me from very early on is the few times I've seen any vehicles either entering or leaving, they've all been so big that they've had to use the whole of what is currently open.
There must have been about 10 to 12 vehicles when I looked down there. There
Yeah,
were a
that's what
lot with the lights on,
Right.
big
That-
vehicles.
That's what I see when I go by
Yeah.
as well.
Well,
Okay. All right, let's just keep on it.
Yep.
Any new business? I do have one bit of information. Mr. Ring wants to appear before us on November the 6th.
By himself?
I don't know, but I sent him
That's
an
great.
invitation.
Okay.
And he said that he would be here. He said tentatively, I think, but, you know, he got back and he said that he would be here. So I think that maybe at our next meeting after the public hearing, we can just chat about that, about how we want to conduct ourselves and stuff like that. But, so that's good news. Okay.
We're not going to have a discussion about the site walkthrough,
We can't,
not to the public hearing.
right. It really should be confined to the public hearing.
Oh, okay. I thought it had to be a public meeting. I mean,
It can't be at this meeting? Oh, it has to be at the public hearing? I didn't know that. I'm glad you raised that. So,
is that right, David?
Well, I think if there's any substantive discussion about the project, it should be confined to the public hearing.
Yeah, if,
Those of us that were there could answer questions
I was gonna
outside
say,
the meeting, I would say.
um,
It's easy enough to do.
I wasn't,
Observations.
yeah, I
Observations,
wasn't
but no.
there, so let me be the
You can ask some questions.
interlocutor here.
You can ask some
Right.
questions.
What, in fact, did you see that was of most concern? What should I
I
look
drove-
for when I go and see it?
I drove by. I called Chrissy to make sure it was okay because I could not make the site walkthrough, and I was surprised how steep it was out back. And I noticed Martha had mentioned to me to look at the wetlands, how close the wetlands were to the proximity of the home.
Okay.
What just impressed me was just how tight this site is to accommodate what she wants to do on it. It's just a very tight site.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's really,
Right, it's a sight from hell, as I said the other
it's
night.
a very, very difficult site. I like her. I'd love to see her successful, but boy, it's tough.
It's a challenge to.
It's a
to
real
beat.
challenge, and for someone who doesn't have the resources, or doesn't appear to have the resources monetarily, or has not done a project of this type before, it causes some concern.
You were just there, was the engineer?
Yes.
Who drew up the plans there?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And
Yeah,
did
went
he
through it.
have answers to questions that people had?
Not really answers. He was telling us, correct me if I'm wrong, he was telling us the areas that he's going to explore. He's wishy-washy about going to gravel back from the asphalt. I think he said that the other night.
Right.
He isn't so sure he's gonna do that now. He's looking at other BMPs to meet the requirements.
He would like to keep the
He would like
pavement.
to keep the pavement, yeah.
I could see
Because he
that.
I
said
think
he
there's a
didn't
lot
get
to
that
be
much
said for-
benefit.
Yeah,
There's a lot to be said for that if he can meet the other requirements in some other way.
I could see that.
Which he may be able to do, may not, I don't know, it's a challenge. The good news from their perspective is Doug did not have a problem with the wetlands lines. And that was something
That's
I
true.
was a little suspicious of, as was he, looking at it from a distance, but he and I walked it separately one other day before the meeting, and had his feeling was that they represented the edge of wetlands
So
appropriately.
what did he get out of that, when he went down with his, whatever that thing is?
Probe?
Yeah, the probe, he got clay at about 18 inches?
Well, he got a sort of semi-clayey silt. When, that was not representative of the test pits. Last Tuesday, he got Tom got a backhoe out there and we did 2 test pits.
Okay.
One was in the forebay, which is not an infiltration site, it's just a settling pond.
Right.
And that was clay. That was a D soil. And D is as bad as it gets.
Yeah.
That's clay or ledge or something equally impenetrable. And the one that is going to infiltrate, which was a leaching detention pond, that was beautiful. Well, relative, for Newbury, it was beautiful stuff.
And
It
so-
was B.
And so looking at the wetlands from where we were, John, which?
The good stuff, believe it or not, was further away from the road. Yeah, you would expect it kind of be the other way because of the grades, but that was not the case. Where the detention pond was gonna go, it was good stuff.
Good stuff.
It was better than he had expected. He had been calling the whole site a C, and it wasn't. One of them was a D and one of us a B. But you can't,
Just
you
goes
you
to
can't
show you.
average
Just
things
goes
like
to
that.
show you.
It's like one hand on a block of ice and the other hand on a hot stove. They don't average out to you being comfortable. But that part kind of looks like it's okay. The rest of it is a question of him slogging through and seeing how he can make the numbers come out legitimately. And that's gonna be a challenge.
One of the things that occurred to me, and just to get this on the record, and I don't expect discussion because we can't do that, but it had occurred to me looking at an aerial that it might be possible to explore accessing that site from
The holistic.
the medical
Yeah.
property.
We talked about that relative to fire access in the rear. And others looked at it, I did not, but others thought that that might be possible.
I think it would be possible. They could fight the fire from the parking lot, assuming it wasn't full of cars. But we, obviously, this, accessing it from that site requires an easement and considerable legalities and so forth, so easy to talk about it, but from a topography standpoint, I think it's quite doable.
Does it solve any problems? It would be, you know, the place that I would go with this, and I'm not asking you to tell me, but,
Sure.
you know, but that would be my question,
Yeah.
because I wondered whether it might.
Well, I think
Okay.
it's possible, I wouldn't say it's necessarily the best solution from the client's, his client's standpoint. But
Okay,
I think it's
you okay?
a solution.
Yep.
Okay. All right, liaison reports, Board of Selectmen, just Martha, anything else that went on that we didn't read in the paper?
Probably not. They did approve the warrant or sign the warrant last night for the special town meeting.
Good. Which you will do.
Sign the, oh, at the,
MVPC?
No, we had our first meeting, and except for the fact that financing is, you know, beginning to be a little kind of, I think we're going to be fine, but always at this time
You
of
say
year.
we, you mean
We, the commission.
the commission.
But at this time of year, you know, things get to be a little movable, let's say. And what's happening nationally is not helping to, you know, make things any clearer.
No.
The one good piece of news for those of you who travel west is that the new Groveland Bridge is
Oh,
now
I know, yes.
open, which is quite exciting.
Yeah.
That is-
Boy, I can't believe the number of bridges that have been under
Right.
repair.
And also, I think the Rocks Village Bridge is ahead of schedule, which may mean that
It's supposed
it
to open
will
in the fall, am I right?
be open fairly soon.
Good.
Yeah,
Good,
which
thank
will
you.
be great for those of us who need to cross the Merrimack. The bad news probably is that they have started significant construction on I-95 corridor.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I mean,
you
there's
know,
the reports
Whittier
you've seen.
Bridge.
They
about-
knocked off a lane, and that caused all kinds of difficulties.
Well, in
Right.
addition, I mean, all these families that are right adjacent to the
Oh, yeah.
construction are going, and they should be, going crazy. I mean,
Yeah,
some of those condominiums are, you know, 50 feet from the construction site, and that's gotta be very disruptive, very bad stuff.
and they have refused so far, anyway, to increase the height and density of the sound barrier, which they're moving anyway, and it strikes me as really peculiar that
I
they.
think they could do that first.
Well, it wasn't
No?
in the budget, you know, and I think
Fine.
part of it is that we traded off the bike trail and the pedestrian trail across the bridge for a number of things. It wasn't quite the gift that people perhaps thought it was.
Well, but the point is, it's a $350 million project, am I right?
I think it's more like 280. By the time it's finished, of course, we all know it'll be.
Yeah, they tend
Yes,
to
It's just-
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I mean, if they start off by having the whole town, or a good portion of the town mad at them, that's not a good way to start.
Well, and actually, frankly, it'll be 3 communities
Yeah.
directly, and we will experience issues too. I mean, you really can see that.
Okay, Concom, John?
Nothing, right, just the 168, 169, 167. And you
Okay.
heard all of that
Yep.
last week.
Right. Okay. Linda's not here. Call for a move to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Done.
Master, is the town meeting on the 22nd?
Yes.